Hello everyone. It's James again. And I just want to make a follow-up video to my last one. Talking about how to brainwash an entire society. And there was one part in there where I talked about starting off marriage. State-licensed marriage, I might add, via trauma bonding. And I want to talk a bit more about this. And why it's part of the reason why men are no longer wanting to sign up to state-sanctioned marriages. Now this video in no way saying men are all good and women are all bad. Because that's not true at all. There are horrible men that take advantage of women. Which is a terrible, terrible thing. And there are women that do the same to men. And it as well is a horrible, horrible thing. However, society doesn't see the bad things that happen to the men in such situations as a terrible thing. And that's the problem right there. Now the trauma bonding I'm talking about is the party that men and women are told by society they must have right before they get married. It's a party where they are to both go out and do some horrible stuff, let's say, and lie to each other and tell each other nothing of the sort happened. And what happens in this process is trauma bonding in this relationship. And let's say for all intents and purposes, both the man and woman were faithful to each other during their dating relationship. What do you think it will do to their minds after they do all of this horrible stuff a day or two before they get married? And then they lie to each other about it? It creates trauma and messed up brain patterns and now screws up the dynamics of their relationship. It dirties it up. And completely changes it. Now that being said, there is a difference between men and women during such events. No, again. It's not to say men are better than women. And women are better than men. However, just like when we are talking about narcissistic abuse, we see person after person all telling the same stories. From one part of the world to the next. To where we know what happened to us all is real and there is a pattern. Well, there have been many of female and male entertainers, let's say, that have talked about their experiences at such parties and clubs. Along with bouncers, doormen, and limo drivers. And they pretty much all say the same thing. Over and over and over again. To where you know what all of these people that don't know each other are saying is pretty much the norm. And that's the women that show up to such events are way worse than the men. This isn't my opinion. This is the opinion of those that work in such an industry. And this goes hand in hand with why men, or one of the many reasons why men are no longer signing marriage agreements. And again, from your basic online article to big articles usually in women's magazines, where these people are interviewed saying, when it comes to men and these parties, usually the woman shows up with a bouncer type to make sure nothing happens to her that she doesn't want to have happen to her. Also at such clubs there is a bouncer standing nearby to make sure the men can't touch the women, while the women are dancing and doing their thing. The women state that there are some women that work in such industry only if you pay them a pretty penny and maybe also paying the bouncer she's with. Will she do something extra? And this is usually because the best man eggs it on and asks if this or that can happen if extra money is given. Otherwise things are very clinical at best. And yes, no one in her right mind should want her husband to be in such a room. It's really luck of the draw. Or unluck of the draw rather. If something extra will happen or not. And most of the women that worked in such an industry made a point to say. Most of the grooms-to-be didn't want to even be there. And all of the extras seemed to be asked for by the best men or other men in the party for the groom-to-be. That being said, it's reported that most men don't act up usually. Not all of the time, but usually in such situations. Not because they are better, but because there's big bouncer guys that will beat the crap out of them if they get out of hand. Again, even all that being said, going off to such a place regardless if you are getting married or not, and expecting your wife to sit at home is abuse. And it's wrong. But that brings me to the other side of the coin. Maybe not you, but the average woman isn't staying home. To the contrary, they like when their man goes to such places because they know how the rules work and the men's chances at having the same time they have is very slim. And what I mean by that is, most of the men that work at such places or give such parties say that no extra money is given. And from the moment the parties starts, the women are out of control. And nearly every woman in the room does something with that man that would cause any man she's involved with to leave her. They do confess now and then there are a woman or two that want nothing to do with what's going on. But usually the women are rowdy, loud, destructive when it comes to the property there. And they seem to have no rules when dealing with the male entertainment, along with dealing with the doormen and the limo drivers. And as mentioned before, let's say this woman that's getting married never cheated during the dating phase with such a man. And then this happens. She has one of these reckless parties and she does more than cheats. She cheats and she watches as her best friends cheat as well. It's now like they've become a secret society through trauma. But now this evil is in her head and in her heart. And now when her secret society calls and wants to go to Vegas for the weekend, or Cancun for the weekend, or Europe for 2 weeks, she knows what that means. Reliving her bachelorette party. And this is where society comes in. Those that run this earth know what's going on. Heck, they created these events those in society partake in. So if a man says, "I don't feel comfortable with you going to here or there," he's seen as controlling. He's seen as a bad husband. And is shamed into going back into the mind control state of saying, "I trust my wife. We have a good relationship." Because deep down inside he knows what happened the night of her bachelorette party. And what might have happened during his party as well. And the coping skill he learned was to pretend it doesn't exist. Both men and women can and do this coping skill when put in such trauma situations. However, I have to state, society openly tells men that if you don't accept this is just how it is and these are places and things your wife is going to do, then you're insecure in your manhood. That you're this and that. Heck, other men get in on the action and shame these men that stand up and say this isn't right. I've seen it before. I've seen where a man at work was talking about how he was going to get married. And one of the women said, "Woohoo. That means your wife is going to have a wild bachelorette party, right?" And this man said, "We aren't going to have these parties. We don't believe in that kind of thing." Boy oh boy. This man got hit with every single shaming tactic you can think of. Not just from the woman that made the first comment, but other men that were nearby that jumped into the conversation. Men that went through this trauma bonding ritual themselves, I might add. I've seen where women were invited to such places and they said, "I'm sorry, I don't go to such places as I'm in a serious relationship." And again, these decent women are hit with every shaming tactic you can think of. This tells you it's normal. And because men know, though men and women are both capable of narcissism and cheating. Cheating is different when you are talking about men and women. Just like bachelorette parties and such. A woman can have it in her mind she's going to cheat today. And find someone today to cheat with. A man can have it in his mind to cheat but not be able to find someone willing to cheat with him. The mind is exactly the same evil, along with what's in their heart. But the chance to do it is different. Again, one is not better than the other. Men just know. They can't just show up to a place and get lucky. They know their wife and girlfriends can rip the house down partying and end up with some guy quite easy. And the spell for many men regarding this has been broken. Do you realize most men, even if they are dating church girls, if they said, "There is no wild parties right before we get married nor after. Also we are signing a prenup." Yes. I know sometimes they work. Sometimes they don't. But I will tell you, if most men mentioned both of those two things, no bachelorette party. And no bachelor party for him. And no girls' night out while married. And a prenup. Majority of the women would dump such a man even if they were together for 5 years or longer. And many of you are nodding your head because you know what I'm saying is right. Now this should tell you what marriage has come to. Marriage can be for both parties a bad business deal built on trauma bonding and cheating. What would be nice is to see people to start having relationships not based on social norms, but what is moral, decent and right. But people by and large want to do what others are doing. Follow the leader. Others are signing marriage licenses and ending up in a mess with the state telling them what they can and can't do. Why? Because all of their friends did it and they don't want to be the odd one out. That being said, people are waking up. Now there are some men that talk about this from the angle of having no knowledge at all. They are just talking about this because it's something for them to do. But there are some men that have been through the ringer. Not once, but 3 or 4 times and they are done. And other men have watched their friends get screwed up by this and thought better of making the same mistake. So I will tell you, moralful women, good women, if you find a good man that wants to be in your life but doesn't want the state involved in your relationship, as long as he's treating you right and not cheating on you, and follows what the Bible says, you might have a good man on your hands. And men, if you find a good woman that understands how the world is, and why signing a state license is a mistake, you might have a good woman on your hands. We need to stop following these weird rituals that are given to us that do nothing but lead us to our own destruction. Then maybe we might have a chance for good men and good women to find one another. What do you think? I'm curious to your thoughts. With that being said, I hope everyone's day was blessed. And until next time, bye for now. And be good to yourself.